This is something that I've been working on improving for quite a while now. And to be honest, I am still not very good at decorating and making a beautiful farm. However, I have learned a few tips and tricks that really helped me make better looking farms, and hopefully they will help you too. Before we do get started, if there are any decorators watching this video, please do consider popping into my Discord and sharing your farms with us. I'm still very much a rookie compared to most of you guys. Alrighty, let's get started. The first tip is extremely basic, but just in case someone didn't know it, here it is. There are tons of furniture options in Stardew Valley, but they are kind of hard to get. Most of the chairs, tables, even pot plants will randomly be sold by peer or by the traveling merchant, and this makes it really hard to test a bunch of different colors and variations out. Luckily, this is easily solved by buying a furniture catalog. You can purchase the furniture catalog from Robin for 200,000 gold. It sounds expensive, but it's definitely worth it. The furniture catalog will give you an unlimited supply of all kinds of furniture items in Stardew Valley. This will help out a ton. While you are at Robin's carpentry store, you should also buy all of the recipes that she has to offer. She has recipes for unique flooring and lamps. There are a total of 16 recipes to buy from her, and all of these help add variation to your farm. Now that you have a bunch of different types of flooring, it is time to put them to use. It is always a good idea to use flooring to guide the flow of your farm. I would recommend placing flooring at all 3 entrances to your farm because you will often find yourself walking through those paths anyway, so it just kind of makes sense. They should all logically connect together in some kind of way. Flooring is not only for aesthetic purposes. Your character will move a tiny bit faster when walking on flooring, and your character will walk much slower when walking through grass or crops. Getting around your farm quickly is a nice bonus. I will say that you should not make huge paths. I would limit the width of your floors to 3 tiles wide, especially if you are using the stone flooring. The gray floor can be a little bit overwhelming and might prove difficult to offset the grayness. Adding on to that, you should definitely not settle for a single floor type for your farm. There are 13 options you can pick from, and you should definitely make use of a few of them to reduce some of the repetition. Some of the flooring isn't solid and looks more like a suggested path than a dedicated pathway. These might not be the best flooring for your main road. However, they make excellent pathways for shortcuts around your farm. They also work really well for shorter paths to these little hidden areas around your farm. And there are many cases where this type of flooring makes more sense than the other type. You will have to play around with different types until it just looks right. Now for something that I think is more subjective, and that is symmetry. Even if it was not on purpose, symmetry will make it look like you planned your farm from day 1 on your save file. Having a symmetrical farm makes it look especially good from a distance. But symmetry is not really required for a beautiful farm design. It just makes it a little bit easier if you are unsure of what you want. I know it is extremely tempting to place down 100 iridium sprinklers and grow thousands of crops. However, this is pretty hard to design in a way that looks aesthetically pleasing. I would recommend you set up some dedicated spots on your farm for farming crops, but if you're going for maximum aesthetic, it should not be larger than 25% of your farm. To make your farming areas look a little bit better, I would also recommend not placing all of your crops right up against each other. An iridium sprinkler will water crops 2 tiles away from the sprinkler in every direction. I must say that leaving an extra space between these sections of crops and maybe placing some pathways between them makes for a much better looking setup. And when you have a large variety of crops, all different colors and shapes, it just looks really nice in my opinion. Sure, these are not all profitable crops. However, I am specifically going for something pretty here. You can always fill up your entire ginger island with ancient fruit and leave your main farm for beauty. If you're going for a very symmetrical setup, you could have 2 or even 4 spots on your farm dedicated to crops, but make them a little bit smaller to allow for room around your farm for other things. This one is a little bit harder to get just right, so I would recommend zooming out quite a bit. It is true that you can make a very good looking farm with many straight squares and right angles, but adding a little bit of curve to your farm goes a really long way. It is harder to see and envision this type of setup if you are zoomed in, but once you zoom out or if you take a screenshot of your farm, it looks amazing. Just something to note about shapes. Consistency is key in designing a farm. If you are going for straight edges, then most of your farm should follow that approach. But if you are going for curves, it might make sense to do that on your whole farm so it looks coherent. You can create shapes on your farm by using floors or fences or both. You're probably going to want one of every type of building in the game, from coops, sheds, to barns. They will add different shapes to your farm, and their placements can actually be extremely important. I usually just put all of my animal buildings together so that I only need to make a single enclosure for my animals. However, placing them further apart from each other adds some complexity to your farm layout, especially if you want to build a very unique enclosure for each of your animal buildings. It's almost as if each building is a destination of its own. By doing this, you can dedicate a bunch of space for a certain building and then dedicate a different chunk for a different building. And doing this will quickly fill up gaps in your farm, making it feel more full even though there might only be a few buildings. Don't forget that you can paint your farm buildings at Robin's store and it's completely free. Stardew Valley lets you paint all of your buildings and there's not many limitations to this. You can really get the look you want by doing this, especially if you're going for a themed design. This is something I really struggle with, but not everything on your farm needs to serve a functional purpose. Areas like this really add a ton to your farm. This is just a spot with some tables and chairs, and it really doesn't serve any purpose, besides making your farm look like somewhere people actually live. This is where your furniture catalog comes in handy. You can mix and match chairs and tables and decorations until it looks just right. Don't be afraid to experiment. You might actually stumble onto something that brings life and sets your farm apart from others. And don't be afraid to completely redo an area if it doesn't seem right. That extra effort really does show when the final design is done. It gets really dark in Stardew Valley, like really dark. And naturally, we want our farms to look decent during the night too, right? Thankfully, there are tons of lighting options for us to use. Most of the really good ones are craftable, so your furniture catalog might not be used much here. If you have an area that might look strange with a bunch of lamps and fire pits, you can use this little trick to give your farm light without having much of an impact on your design. You can place basic torches behind items to illuminate areas without the light source being that noticeable. These are really hidden behind most trees, and if you place an item on an end table, a torch is usually hidden quite a while behind it. Most light sources don't have a very large range, so you'll have to use a few of them. Using hidden torches is a great way to hide the light source whilst still illuminating your farm. I would recommend you create a general layout of all of your main areas of attraction on your farm before adding small details to your farm. Initially, you might have tons of empty space, but you can quite easily fill in empty spaces on your farm with little benches, trees, and all kinds of things. I think adding all of those minor details will probably take the longest amount of time. And that brings us to the last tip for my farm decoration. Spending that extra bit of effort on the small stuff across your entire farm will turn it from a good looking farm into an out of this world amazing looking setup that will surely bring envy to all of your friends. Make use of trees, bee houses, statues, and all of those random little decorative items to turn your farm into something special. Trees are incredibly good at making your farm unique and stand out. Trees will automatically spread and you will have to maintain them quite often. To avoid this, you can surround your trees with paths. Using a gravel path for this works really well because it's not that disruptive and works really well with most setups. And those are all my tips to turning your highly functional, profitable farm into something unique, special, and absolutely beautiful. And as I said earlier, I'm still new to this decorating thing in Stardew Valley, so if you have any tips and tricks to share with us, please drop them in the comments below. I would love to learn more, and I'm sure someone else watching this video might also benefit from an extra tip or two. But for now, I will see you in the next video.